Democrat Stacey Abrams is running against Republican Brian Kemp in Georgia to become the next governor. So this is a really important story, and it's not getting that much coverage. But I wanted to lay it out for you guys in detail so you see exactly what's happening there and why it's utter nonsense and it's gross that this is happening in the United States of America in the year 2018. So Abrams is a lawyer, and in 2013, she founded a group called the New Georgia Project. And what this is a nonprofit organization that registers non-voters to vote. So, doing something that's wonderful, that's pro small d democratic. And listen, the answer, we need automatic voter registration. That's what we should have. If this country actually cared deeply about getting everybody to vote and having a real functional democracy where everybody participates, we would have at the very least automatic voter registration. So we don't have that. So people like Stacey Abrams, she stepped up and said, let's create this group where we register people to vote. Well, what's interesting is that Brian Kemp, the guy running against her, is the current Secretary of State in Georgia. So he has to oversee elections. That's part of what the Secretary of State does. So the Secretary of State is running for governor, and he's overseeing his own election, and he's refusing to recuse himself from that role. See, right away, even if these facts were the only ones we had, that's already a gigantic story. Should that be allowed? That strikes me as some really sketchy shit. That strikes me as if we read a fact like this happening in Russia, everybody would talk about how Russia's not even really a democracy and how it's rigged and it's a system that perpetuates elite dominance and oligarch dominance. I mean, you're going to have a system where the current Secretary of State is running for governor, he gets to oversee his own election. And we're all just supposed to accept on faith that there's not going to be fuckery. Ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. Okay, now it gets worse. So, this is from the New Statesman. Here's what they say. According to the Associated Press, Kemp has suspended 53,000 voter registrations because of an exact match rule that he introduced, which compares voter registration information to Social Security and state driver records and suspends voting applications if the match is not exact. A missing accent or hyphen, a middle name not fully written out, or a misspelling is enough to trigger a suspension. Black voters make up 70% of suspended registrations, but make up only a third of the voting population, the AP reported. A large number of them were registered by the New Georgia Project. This is just out in the open brazen. You have people on the right who always complain about voter fraud. Oh my God, voter fraud. What a problem this is. We need the integrity of our elections to be upheld. Well, guys, numerous studies have come back. Voter fraud is nearly non-existent. Again, not my opinion, that's a fact. But you know what is a huge problem? Election fraud. A huge problem is this, what you're looking at right here. So, 53,000 voters kicked off the rolls, purged from the rolls, and the reasoning is, hey, listen, man, on your driver's license, you put your middle initial, but when you registered to vote, you didn't put your middle initial. I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember exactly what I put on my driver's license versus when I registered to vote. Sometimes I do put my middle initial down. Sometimes I don't put my middle initial down. So on some fucking credit card I have, my middle initial is there. On some other debit card I have, my middle initial is not there. When I file taxes, I don't think I put my middle initial there, but technically, my government name, I do have a middle name and therefore a middle initial. But what they're saying is unless it's a perfect match everywhere, we're just going to purge you. So even though it is you, we're just going to purge you because the paperwork wasn't exactly correct. And oh, would you look at that? It happened to overwhelmingly be among black voters. This is what's called voter suppression. This is how it's done. This is what it is. They always give themselves just a little bit of plausible deniability, where when they hear people like me call them out for their obvious fuckery and bullshit to try to rig the election in favor of Kemp, what'll they do? Oh, us? Steal an election? Why, I never. All we did, we care so deeply about the process, and we want the process to be pure and just, that we had to purge the rolls of the people who didn't have the exact matches on their voter, registration as they did on their driver's license, because we care so much about democracy, not because we're trying to steal it. Well, then why is it 70% of the people just happen to be African American? And of course, Stacey Abrams is African American. And why is it that a large number of these people who were purged were also registered by the New Georgia Project? By the way, this is on top of, so we just talked about 53,000 that they're purging now. And they're doing it specifically to target poor and minority communities so that the Democrat loses. This is voter suppression. But this is on top of journalist Greg Palast. He found that there were about 350,000 other people purged from the rolls since 2016. 350,000. Now, in the New Statesman article, they go into detail, hey, listen, a small number of these are actually totally legit, that they purged them for whatever reason. Maybe they passed away or something like that. But they way overdid it. And the trick they did in this one is, there's a discrepancy between where you used to live and where you live now, or so we say, or you didn't vote in the last election. So they automatically purged everybody who didn't vote in the last election. Sorry, you didn't vote in the last election. You're gone. You're purged. This is targeted. This is on purpose. And the fact that he hasn't recused himself says a lot, doesn't it? Because he wants to have control of this election process. Let me tell you something. If it wasn't for the election fuckery, you would likely have the first black female governor in Georgia ever. Stacey Abrams. But this is what happens. This is... Republicans prefer when fewer people turn out to vote. Democrats prefer when more people turn out to vote. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Whenever there's a high turnout, Democrats are more likely to win. Whenever there's a low turnout, Republicans are likely to win. The people who vote Republican, as a general rule, demographically speaking, are older and white. They turn out to vote in every election, so they're virtually a given. Whereas younger people who overwhelmingly lean Democratic do not turn out to vote in every election. So again, the higher the turnout, the more likely it is the Democrats win. And so in states like Georgia, they know, hey, listen, we might have to do some fuckery in order to keep power. And this ties right into the gerrymandering crisis that we have in this country, where there's a systematic attempt to disenfranchise black voters, people of color, poor people. So I just need you to understand what's going on. And it's amazing that this is not a bigger story. You should have heard a lot more about this, but you didn't hear a lot about this, have you? And I haven't heard that much about it either, and I should have heard a lot more about it. But it is a direct result of actions like this that skews election results in favor of Republicans and against Democrats. And we have a situation today where there are way more votes for Democrats over the past decade, and Republicans control the House and the Senate. Some of that's just because of the nature of our system and how it's created. And a lot of that is because of gerrymandering and voter suppression, voter ID, things of that nature, which are not like we just care so much that we need to have these policies in place. No, it is a deliberate attempt to suppress the vote so Republicans win.